You're a low-level enforcer for one of Gotham's crime families, and you've done this run 100 times. Collect the money, keep your head down, and go home. Tonight, the alley is quiet. Too quiet. You tell people later, except nobody actually thinks in those words in the moment. What you actually feel is your stomach drop, about 4 seconds before anything happens at all. Then the bulb above you flickers out. Not because it's broken, you'll check that later too, but because something just moved between it and you. You don't see him, not yet. You just know the shape of the dark changed. That's the whole trick. That's it. That's most of the fight, and he hasn't thrown a single punch. He's efficient, if nothing else. And now, Batman throws plenty of punches, eventually. The man owns more grappling hooks than sense. But ask anyone who's actually written him, any director, any actor who's worn the suit, and they'll tell you the same thing. The fight is already won by the time he steps into the light. Everything after that is just cleanup. So what's actually happening to you in that alley, psychologically speaking? It's not intimidation. Intimidation is what a bigger guy does in a bar. What Batman's doing has an actual clinical name, and it's been studied for over a century. Classical conditioning. You know the shape, even if you don't know the term. Ivan Pavlov rings a bell every time he feeds his dogs. Eventually, the dogs start drooling at the bell alone, food or no food. The bell was nothing. Repetition made it mean something. Fear works exactly the same way, which is the part that should bother you more than it usually does. In 1920, psychologists Watson and Rayner ran an experiment on a baby that would never get approved today. Pairing a white rat, something the infant wasn't afraid of at all, with a loud, jarring noise every time it appeared. Within weeks, the rat alone was enough. No noise required. The fear had transferred completely onto something that was never dangerous in the first place. And that's the mechanism. Not fists, association. Here's what that looks like at a street level, over years instead of weeks. The first time a rookie enforcer hears about the guy and the cowl, it's a rumor, nothing more. Some story a drunk guy at a bar swears is true. The first time he actually sees him, it's a real fight. Real broken bones. A real trip to Blackgate. That's the noise. That's the unconditioned threat doing its job. By the fifth or sixth time, and there's always a fifth or sixth time in this city, he doesn't need the fight anymore. He just needs the silhouette on a rooftop, 3 blocks away, doing nothing at all, and his hands are already shaking. Nobody taught him that response. Gotham did. One flickering streetlight at a time. Batman doesn't need to be a threat to you personally, tonight in this alley. He only needed to be a real threat often enough, early enough, to enough people that the fear became self-sustaining. Now the shape of a cape in a doorway does the job an actual fight used to require. But here's where it gets sharper than just scary guy conditioned city. He didn't pick a random symbol. He picked one that already had a head start in your nervous system. Psychologist Martin Seligman called this preparedness theory. Humans don't learn every fear equally fast. Show people a flower and a spider, pair both with something unpleasant an identical number of times, and the spider, well, that fear sticks a lot harder than the flower and resists going away longer. You didn't choose to flinch at a bat-shaped shadow. Human ancestry and human history chose it for you. Bruce Wayne, whether the writers ever used the term or not, picked the one image that was already sitting halfway installed in every criminal's oldest wiring, and then spent years running the exact same conditioning experiment Watson ran on that baby, except on purpose. And on adults, across an entire city, at scale. Slightly more ethical than the original. Slightly. And there's a third layer to all this, and it's the one people underestimate the most. He never does it the same way twice. There's no pattern. There's no schedule, no predictable turf you can plan around. That's not just tactics, that's the reinforcement schedule doing extra work. Anxiety researchers have shown again and again that unpredictable threat produces deeper, longer-lasting dread than a predictable one. A threat you can schedule around, you adapt to. A threat that could be behind any door on any night for the rest of your criminal career, that one doesn't fade. It compounds. So he's not just conditioned you to fear a shape, he's conditioned you to fear every shadow indefinitely because you can never be sure which one he's in, which is incidentally why he almost never has to fight the same person twice, except one. And this is the part that actually explains why the Joker breaks him more than any other villain in the rogues gallery. Classical conditioning has a requirement everyone forgets. It needs a working fear response to hijack in the first place. Researchers studying psychopathic traits have found something consistent across decades of work. A blunted fear response, measurably weaker conditioning to threat cues than the general population. Where a normal brain pairs loud noise with danger and flinches forever after, that circuit runs quieter, sometimes barely at all, in people who score high on those traits. Which means the entire system Batman spent years engineering, the shape, the shadow, the unpredictability, the whole conditioned fear architecture, simply doesn't have anywhere to attach in the one villain who matters most. The Joker doesn't flinch at the cowl because the wiring that's supposed to flinch was never fully installed. Everyone else in Gotham is playing Pavlov's game. The Joker's the dog that never drools. That's not a plot convenience. That's Trick's one documented failure mode, dramatized. And here's the part that movies actually get right. More than they probably meant to. This doesn't come free. You can't build yourself into walking conditioned stimulus and then just switch it off at 9 p.m. to have dinner as Bruce Wayne. Fear generalizes. That's not a script flaw. It's exactly what the psychology predicts. Watson's baby didn't just fear the rat. He started fearing a rabbit, a fur coat, a Santa Claus mask, anything with the same rough shape. Once you've conditioned a whole city to flinch at shadows, you don't get to be the one exception standing in a well-lit room. People still read menace into him. Alfred spends half the franchise trying to talk a person back out of the mask he built. That's not a coincidence, and it's not melodrama. It's the same mechanism running in reverse on him. He built a weapon that doesn't come with an off switch, and he's the one who has to live inside it. There's a reason the version of him people find most tragic isn't the one throwing punches. It's the one sitting across from Alfred at breakfast, still scanning the room out of habit, still flinching a half second before he catches himself. The conditioning doesn't check your ID before it fires. It just fires. And before you file this away as just a comic book party fact, this exact wiring runs on you right now without a cape involved. Kids raised by inconsistent parents, sometimes strict, sometimes lenient, no predictable pattern to what triggers punishment, tend to develop more chronic anxiety than kids raised by parents who are consistently strict. Consistent is something that you can prepare for. Unpredictable is something your nervous system has to say brace for all the time, and it never quite learns to stop. You've probably met an unpredictable boss and felt your stomach do the same 4-second drop that enforcer felt in the alley. Same mechanism. Considerably fewer grappling hooks, sure. But next time someone tells you Batman's superpower is being rich, you can tell them, gently, that they're only half right. His real power was never the money, or the gadgets, or even the training. It was figuring out decades before anyone in his world gave it a clinical name, that you don't have to be stronger than someone to control them. You just have to become the thing their nervous system already knew how to fear. He never had to win the fight. He just had to make sure it never started. Which, if you think about it for longer than the runtime of this video probably wants you to, is a genuinely unsettling thing to be good at. The scariest person in any room isn't always the one who could hurt you. sometimes is just the one who's figured out exactly which shadow you are already afraid of. Hey, be sure to subscribe and hit that alarm bell notification and do all those things that everybody always tells you to do. And if you want to check out some of my fiction, there's a link in the pinned comments and in the description. See you in the next video. And thanks for watching.